Built during a period when the luxury motoring marques were in a general retreat, the Rolls-Royce and Bentley SZ range, which encompassed the Silver Spirit and Silver Spur for the former, and the Eight, Mulsanne, Brooklands and Turbo R for the latter, is a machine that even to this day presents mixed opinions among enthusiasts for its sharp-suited looks and performance. In Rolls-Royce circles, the SZ is seen as something of a come-down from the previous Silver Shadow due to its straight lines and hard corners, while in Bentley guise, this generation of car is seen as truly the point where the long-neglected brand was finally able to make a comeback, with a sporting edge being applied that differentiated this machine from its more luxurious Rolls-Royce cousin to create a new renaissance for this most bespoke of marques. The situation at Rolls-Royce Motors when the SZ range was conceived was a troubled period, with the company having taken a major hit during February 1971 when its parent firm, the Rolls-Royce Engine Company, collapsed into bankruptcy due to the expensive and long-delayed development of the RB211 power plant for the Lockheed L1011 TriStar widebody airliner, a project that couldn't be cancelled due to the strictly binding contractual agreements that would have led to ruinous litigation had Rolls-Royce attempted to pull out. However, while the engine company was ultimately rescued by the Heath government and nationalised, the car division was found to be still financially solvent, thanks in no small part to the commercial success that was the SY range, better known as the Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, which had been launched in 1965 and was a revolutionary step forward for the car builder in terms of design and technology, being aimed more for the driver than as a chauffeur-driven limousine as per older models. Spun off as an independent company during 1973, Rolls-Royce Motors would weather the storm of the first oil crisis during October of the same year, with the Silver Shadow continuing to sell in vast quantities across the world, a second-generation Silver Shadow 2 being unveiled during 1977, which cut down on many of the more luxurious elements of the car in order to meet American safety regulations, while at the same time upgrading the internal mechanics to make it more efficient. In 1975, Rolls-Royce also released the Camargue, a bespoke Italian-style two-door saloon that was originally meant to replace the Corniche in the lineup, but was instead delivered as an ultra-luxury car aimed squarely at the American market, the Camargue not receiving praise for its angular, boxy aesthetic, but was still a commercial success, regardless of it being the most expensive production car on sale at the time. However, in 1979, Rolls-Royce suffered a catastrophic blow to its sales as a result of that year's oil crisis caused by the Iranian Revolution, during which the sale of luxury cars saw a precipitous fall as a global recession crippled the marketplace, while at the same time, the Rolls-Royce brand was starting to suffer an image problem as these beautifully styled cars began to look very outdated and flamboyant when compared to the more understated squared-off designs of the era. This was reflected in the depreciation of early examples, which were often finding their way into the hands of an arguably cheap clientele, namely used car dealers and scrap metal merchants, rather than the celebrity buyers that had once been the mainstay of the Rolls-Royce customer base, while others were pressed into service as wedding cars, the general perception of Rolls-Royce by the late 1970s being but a fraction of its once glorious reputation as the regal carriages of the aristocracy. Therefore, amid the ongoing upheaval of the 1979 oil crisis, Rolls-Royce began development of a replacement car for the near 15-year-old Silver Shadow, with Austrian-born engineer Fritz Weller being tasked with developing a more understated Rolls-Royce for the 1980s that was given the codename SZ. The SZ platform would be longer, lower and wider than its predecessor, but would be a largely familiar mechanical package, including the venerable 6.75-litre all-aluminium pushrod V8 engine mated to a General Motors supplied 3-speed automatic transmission, while the only notable change was the independent rear suspension that utilised a coil and gas spring arrangement that had been adopted on the Rolls-Royce Camargue and Corniche during 1979, with a significant improvement to rear seat ride. The bodywork, made by the British Leyland-owned Press Steel Fisher, adhered to a 3-box shape, and like the Silver Shadow, would incorporate doors, bonnet and boot lids that were made of light alloy for weight reduction, while the new rectangular headlights blended well with the radiator grille, this grille being slightly wider and had a radiused edge on the slopes, but the lower build and smoother shape of the bodywork resulted in a notable aerodynamic coefficient of 0.45. The car also featured the first retractable Spirit of Ecstasy bonnet mascot in the company's history, a continuation of a design trend that had begun during the early 1970s, initially for the purposes of pedestrian safety in the event of an accident, while by the end of the decade, it was more to ensure that these delicate items weren't stolen or broken off by vandals. From the Silver Shadow 2 in 1977, the mascot could tilt to certain angles so that it wouldn't be broken or injure pedestrians, while a wire connected it with the horn so that owners could be made aware if someone was attempting to steal the Spirit from the top of the grille, though this wasn't completely infallible and could still be broken off with enough strength by determined thieves. In the SZ range, a spring-activated retraction device was provided that would see the Spirit, if knocked hard enough, disappear into an empty space inside the grille, this feature being made available as standard for British and European market SZ cars, but would eventually be made standard on all models from 1985 onwards. The new Rolls-Royce models would come in two variants, the standard Silver Spirit Saloon with a 120.5-inch wheelbase and the Silver Spur long wheelbase saloon with a 124.5-inch wheelbase, the Silver Spirit being approximately 3 inches longer than the old Silver Shadow, which remained in production for a few months after the announcement of the 1980 SZ models and was exclusively for the American market due to delays in converting the Silver Spirit and Silver Spur to left-hand drive. Prices for the new Silver Spur were to be set at less than £50,000, with this more expensive variant entering sales in 1980 with a retail cost of £49,629, £7,770 more than the last generation Silver Shadows which it replaced, while as part of its extension to long wheelbase, the Spur would be built as a single entity, unlike the previous Silver Wraith 2, a long wheelbase version of the Shadow, which was cut in half and extended prior to leaving the factory. The new Spirit and Spur range also made the very best use of interior space by aiming to serve 4 adults in comfort rather than forcing 5 seats into the cabin, as while the car could theoretically seat 5, the design of the rear seats was more to an armchair specification tailored for 4 passengers, that was upholstered in soft Connolly hide with ample leg and knee room, with the wider body also providing generous elbow room. All models had Rolls-Royce's impeccable 2-level air conditioning, 4-speaker stereo equipment, thick carpeting, and polished walnut veneer, while standard kit also included automatic 3-speed transmission with electric selector lever and cruise control, a new fascia feature also adopted, being a digital panel providing time of day, elapsed time of journey, and outside temperature, and the seats were electrically operated, as were the exterior rear vision mirrors and windows. In total, the SZ Rolls-Royce models presented a curb weight of around 2.2 tons, while performance was measured at a 0 to 60 time of 10.5 seconds and a top speed of 125 miles an hour, though even when travelling at 100 miles an hour, these cars provided a near-silent cabin interior and superb ride quality, though the rack and pinion steering was noted as being a little too light at speed and a little too insensitive. However, during conception of the SZ, Rolls-Royce, facing financial ruin in the wake of the 1979 oil crisis, was purchased by Vickers, the last remaining element of a once sizable corporate empire who sought to ensure the car builder's future by employing all facets at its disposal so as to fight its way back into the hearts of ultra-rich customers, who had since been won over by the likes of Mercedes-Benz, one of these elements being the long-neglected Bentley brand. Bentley had been a subsidiary of Rolls-Royce since the 1930s, but by 1979 accounted for only 7% of total sales for the wider firm, its equivalent to the Silver Shadow, the T-Series, amounting to 2,280 out of a total of 32,337 produced between 1965 and 1980 for the SY platform, while the new SZ Bentley model, the Mulsanne, would be merely a badge-engineered translation of the regular Rolls-Royce examples. However, under the leadership of Rolls-Royce Managing Director David Plastow, who had been appointed to the rank by Vickers during the buyout of 1980, he was able to see the potential of the Bentley brand in reviving Rolls-Royce's fortunes, and considered that the unique selling point for the Bentley marque was its pronounced improvement in performance against the Rolls-Royce models, a homage to its pedigree racing roots during the Roaring '20s and early '30s. Therefore, in 1982, a turbocharged version was released that increased the power output of the 6.75-litre engine by 50%, over the standard car, presenting performance and luxury that was completely unrivaled by the likes of Mercedes-Benz and BMW, and thereby able to put some fight back into the ailing Bentley marque as it rapidly became a major sales success for the Rolls-Royce company. At the other end of the scale, an entry-level model dubbed the Bentley 8 was launched in 1984 at a price below £50,000, some £6,000 cheaper than the Mulsanne, while further changes would be administered to the Bentley range in order to differentiate it from the Rolls-Royce equivalents, including alloy wheels, body-coloured grille surrounds and slats, mesh grille inserts, and twin round headlamps instead of the original large rectangular units. Taking the regal edge off the Bentley brand, and thereby emphasizing its more sporty aspects, finally put a breath of fresh air into the marque by truly ensuring that it would no longer be confused as merely a badge-engineered Rolls-Royce. And with these machines being given a new injection of character, Bentley faced an incredible renaissance during the 1980s as its sales climbed rapidly, eventually accounting for 41% of the total output for the SZ range when compared to 7% for the SY. Rolls-Royce, on the other hand, started off strongly with the Silver Spirit and Silver Spur, their squared, almost American look, making them understated, but with no reduction in their overall luxury, the SZ range being adored by the newly emerging financial sector of the world's economies, which adopted a far more sharp-suited appearance to the flowing regal lines of cars like the Silver Shadow. The Silver Spirit and Spur continued with few changes for almost a decade, before the Series 2 models were launched at the Frankfurt Motor Show in 1989. These revised cars featuring automatic ride control, which was a system of continuously adjustable shock absorbers, ABS, and updated Bosch fuel injection, while a General Motors supplied 4-speed automatic transmission finally arrived in late 1991. The Series 3 would make its appearance during 1994 and featured minor cosmetic tweaks and engine upgrades, while a turbocharged version, dubbed the Flying Spur, was launched in the same year, as was the Silver Dawn, an American market special edition of the Silver Spur that introduced a 2-inch shallower radiator grille, a smaller Spirit of Ecstasy mascot, closer-fitting wraparound bumpers, and a new sail panel carrying the repositioned door mirror in place of the deleted front quarter light. The modifications applied to the Silver Dawn, along with the turbocharger, would be standardized across the range a year later with the launch of the Series 4 models. As for Bentley, the company would continue to go from strength to strength, especially following the 1985 launch of the Turbo R, which replaced the standard Mulsanne Turbo, the R standing for road holding, and the new model featured retuned suspension settings while riding on wider alloy wheels, this car being the first Bentley to have these fitted as standard. The improvement in the car's handling was transformational, and was truly the first Bentley to be considered a super sport saloon that matched the heritage of this coveted brand, while its performance was further added to by the inclusion of fuel injection during 1987. In 1992, the regular Mulsanne and Bentley 8 was replaced by the Brooklands, and was intended as a slightly less expensive alternative to the Bentley Turbo R, featuring the same styling, underpinnings, and Rolls-Royce 6.75-litre V8 engine, but initially without the more powerful model's turbocharger, though this would appear as standard from the autumn of 1996 in the form of a light pressure turbo, boosting power output to 300 horsepower. The final version of the SZ platform to be delivered would be the Bentley Turbo RT, the last and most expensive version of the Turbo R line, which was launched in 1997 and featured a 400 horsepower 6.75-litre V8 engine, as used in the Continental T, which was boosted by a single Garrett AI Research T04 turbocharger and a Zetec EMS3 engine management system, as had been developed using Formula One racing technology and differed from earlier models with the Motronic system. The RT was visually differentiated from other Bentley Turbo R models by its sports wheels, radiator mesh grille, and color-coded bumpers with bright mesh inserts, and could provide a top speed of 150 miles an hour, the ultra-luxury Turbo RT being as fast as the sporting German luxury saloons of the time, and featured a base price of $211,600, $65,000 more than the regular Turbo R, with 252 units produced during its single-year run. Beyond the saloons, the SZ platform also lent itself to a revived Bentley coupe model dubbed the Continental, when Peter Ward, marketing director of the company, wanted to further enhance the distinctive sporting nature of the Bentley brand and move away from a Bentley that was merely a rebadged Rolls-Royce, with designers John Heffernan and Ken Greenlee being commissioned to develop a new distinctive Bentley coupe. A fiberglass mock-up of the design was ultimately displayed at the 1985 Geneva Motor Show, dubbed Project 90, though despite its exceptional praise, the scheme was put on hold as Rolls-Royce worked to develop a replacement for the 20-year-old Corniche, although Graham Hull, chief designer in-house at Rolls-Royce, suggested to the board of directors that the design sketched for the Corniche would suit a Bentley coupe better. From this point, it was decided the Corniche would continue as it was, and efforts would once again be channeled into a new Bentley coupe, with 1986 seeing Hull produce a design rendering of a new Bentley coupe, which became the Continental R, and would be based on the Rolls-Royce SZ platform, this car being an aerodynamically shaped two-door coupe. John Heffernan and Ken Greenlee were officially retained to complete the design of the Continental R through their automotive design school at the Royal College of Art, and their own consultancy, International Automotive Design or IAD, based in Worthing in Sussex, Greenlee and Heffernan liaising constantly throughout the design process with Hull in order to create the perfect machine for the Bentley marque. The interior was entirely the work of Hull and the small in-house styling team at Rolls-Royce, while the shape of the car was very different from the somewhat slab-sided four-door SZ Rolls-Royce and Bentley of the time, and offered a much improved drag coefficient of 0.37, the Continental R also featuring roof-cut door frames, a necessity to allow easier access into the car, which had a lower roofline than its four-door saloon contemporaries. A subtle spoiler effect was also a feature of the rear, with the finished car effectively disguising its huge dimensions, despite the fact that the machine was in fact 4 inches longer than a long-wheelbase Mercedes S-Class, the Continental R eventually being released in 1991 to universal acclaim, and would become a seminal model for the 1990s that truly refocused attention onto the Bentley marque for a new generation of celebrity customers. The Continental R would also form the basis of a dedicated convertible dubbed the Azure, which would replace the Corniche upon its launch in 1995, while at the same time lending itself to the development of a Rolls-Royce convertible based on the styling of 1998 Silver Spur, creating the Corniche 5 of 2000, the only instance of a Rolls-Royce car being based off the underpinnings of a Bentley during their union, rather than it being the other way around. Ultimately, the SZ range would give rise to 49 individual Rolls-Royce models and 104 Bentley models, which comprised a mixture of mainstream production cars sold in quantity and bespoke single units tailored to customer specifications, or limited-run variants developed in collaboration with venerable brands such as Jack Barkley, Springfield, Chatsworth, and Joanna Trading, thus demonstrating the huge versatility of the SZ platform for a seemingly endless array of body options. Of particular note are the stretched touring limousines, which were delivered under titles including the Silver Spur Touring Limousine and the Park Ward Limousine, and also had the distinction of being the first instance of Rolls-Royce providing, from the factory, a stretched limo as per the likes of Lincoln in America, while previous models were converted by aftermarket suppliers. However, despite the innate flexibility of the SZ platform, proposals to replace it had begun as early as 1989 under Project SXB, as in the face of modern luxury cars becoming increasingly performance-orientated, the SZ range, especially the Rolls-Royce models, were appearing more and more outdated as the 90s progressed, compounded further by the angular body shell that looked distinctly out of place in a market now seeking to apply rounded curves and sweeping lines. Sales for the Silver Spirit and Silver Spur began to tail off towards the middle of the decade, with these increasingly dated-looking cars being forced to maintain their position on the marketplace as the SXB project continued to face delays and retreads, thus leading to Rolls-Royce once again losing its stronghold of the luxury car market as BMW, Mercedes-Benz and Audi moved in to undercut it with far more modern machines of superior performance and handling. Though the engineering was tuned to help stiffen up the ride in the SZ platform, thereby reducing its notable wallowing as per the likes of 1970s American land yachts, money and market presence continued to decline, with only the cheaper Bentley models keeping the firm afloat, and with Rolls-Royce now standing as a major financial burden to the ailing Vickers Group, it was put up for sale as a means of providing short-term capital during 1997. With BMW and Volkswagen ultimately partaking in a protracted and brutal bidding war, the eventual outcome was Rolls-Royce and its assets being split between the two firms, Bentley to Volkswagen and Rolls-Royce to BMW, while during 1998, the same year as the start of divorce proceedings between the car marques, Project SXB was unveiled in the form of the Rolls-Royce Silver Seraph and the Bentley Arnage, thus meaning the SZ platform for the mainstream saloons could be retired during 1999 after 19 years of production. However, the story would continue for the SZ platform in the form of the Continental R&T, which would remain in production as Bentley's flagship coupe models until a new streamlined Continental was released in 2003, as well as remaining in use under the Rolls-Royce marque with the Corniche 5 until that model was discontinued in 2002, at which point Rolls-Royce and Bentley formally completed their corporate divorce, with the former developing a new range of models from their factory in Chichester. The final use of the SZ platform in a production model would be with the Azure convertible, which maintained these underpinnings until 2003, at which point the car was fully refaced to adopt the SXB platform of the Bentley Arnage, thus rounding out 23 years of this practical and flexible floor plan, forming the backbone of Rolls-Royce and Bentley models, with an assembly that had seen over 20,000 examples under both guises delivered during its near quarter-century lifespan. Today, the SZ range is perhaps the most ubiquitous of classic Rolls-Royce and Bentley models due to their sheer numbers and more utilitarian design when compared to the earlier Shadow, production rates for these cars peaking at 1,000 units per year for nearly 2 decades, thus meaning that examples can be procured for but a fraction of their original asking price, including mint-condition models that have functioned as wedding cars. In terms of reputation, the SZ range proves to be a mixed bag among enthusiasts, with the Rolls-Royce Silver Spirit and Silver Spur facing substantial criticism for their bland appearance when compared to the preceding Silver Shadow, despite the fact that these machines presented equal levels of luxury, as well as improvements in underpinnings and design that could easily outperform their venerable predecessor. As for the Bentley models, these are considered to be the cars that single-handedly saved the marque from complete irrelevance and discontinuation during the early 1980s, as well as giving the brand back a distinct identity from Rolls-Royce by providing it with the luxury sporting credentials and performance the Bentley name had originally been associated with. In the end, the SZ range, despite its flaws and comparatively understated styling, can be owed to the fact that through a simple amendment to the aesthetic and the continued presence of unbeatable luxury, this extremely varied collection of cars helped bring Rolls-Royce and Bentley back from the brink.